Hello and welcome to the Tournament Poker Project. My name's John.
And I am Tain.
And we are two recreational poker players. And this is our journey to get good enough at poker to be able to go and play in the World Series of Poker. And not just good enough to go, because anyone can go who's got a bit of money, but we want to be able to go there and win, right, Tain? That's what we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. We want to go and make it our own.
Make it our own. We want to go and crush the tables. My live bankroll at the moment is minus 80, so a very slight improvement. And my online bankroll is £164, so it's creeping up pretty quick. It's creeping up. Where you at?
I didn't play any live, so I'm sticking at 190, which is all right. But I've gone very much the other way online. I'm down to about $88. Right, I had a bit of a run of bad form where I tilted hard and chased a couple of bad tournaments instead of just saying, okay, I need to have a break or I need to play some 25-cent tables to get the poker out of me.
Went a bit hard, fair enough. Well, look, we are not professional players. We are recreational, although we do take it pretty seriously. We've been studying, we've been doing hand analysis, so we're trying to get much better to a point where we are profitable players. But as such, as not being professionals, we don't overthink, and sometimes we are going to get stuff wrong. So please, if you've got any comments, we'd love to hear from you. Today we're going to be analysing a hand or two, or just one hand that Tain's got for us. What we got?
Yep. So this is playing in the Poker Stars. For us, it's 2:30 in the afternoon. They call it the mini marathon. So it's a $4.90 plus 60 entry fee. So essentially a $5 multi-table. It had roughly 1,000 runners. We're up to level 14. So the blinds are 750, 1,500. You start really deep. The blind levels go up every 15 minutes, which, as you can imagine, for online is quite nice, quite slow. It's a really good tournament for playing, getting your thoughts in, really thinking about play. You get a really long clock if you need to think about something. But also, you don't have to seriously commit to it. Sometimes I feel with online play, especially if it's fast or the action's fast, you really need to sit there and make decision. And that gets too much when you're playing for 6-8 hours. It's too exhausting. Whereas this one, you can chill out, take it easy. So I had good reads on the table. That doesn't mean I was owning it, although I am second stack, I believe. Third stack, sorry. But I had good reads on players. I was picking up on things that I don't normally pick up on. It's not the hand we're analysing, but the person who's sitting to the left of me, I had a good strong read on some of their play, whereby I'd noticed where they were folding over past the flop. I was noticing what their reaction was to continuation bets or check raise continuation bets, and how that affected their play. It was getting good. I was quite enjoying it. But then this hand happened, and it didn't tilt me, but it stopped me in my tracks a little bit, and I think I started losing, not loads, but I started losing after this, so it weren't as good.
A bit of a spoiler alert there that we lose a hand then.
Oh no, whether we lose or not, it's not the case. It's more that I tilted hard, because my lasting feeling after this hand was I couldn't work out what was going on, and it baffled me a little bit. So yeah, we're just going to run through, see if you agree with my maneuvers, and see what your reads on the very villainous villain was. So having a look at the table, we are sitting in the cutoff. The player to the left of me, but as I said, I got good reads on them. Most of the players at the table were fairly passive. I'm hoping that's because of the style of the tournament, where people are doing the same as what I said, where you can have periods of intense play, and then if you've got good stack, chill out for a little bit, maybe go away. Quite a few people kept sitting out for periods, and you could take advantage of that. But for the most part, there was only one or two players that I had a little asterisk against, where I didn't really want to be playing them. One of them sitting in seat 3, which is the small blind. It weren't that they were necessarily good. It was that they'd done something that I gave me pause for thought, and I had to work out what they were doing before I started dumping chips into them.
They don't end up in the hand, do they? So we've got the
Well,
villain.
the other one is seat 6. So seat 6 had done a few things where I was like, I don't overly want to get too involved with them. It could be that they're excellent. It could be that they're just erratic. Okay. But I need to work that out. And unfortunately, this is a hand against one of them villains. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. So seat 6. So this is the under the gun +1. So he pops in a little open there then.
Yes. So we're looking at 750, 1,500 for the blinds. The pot to start with is 3,600. So looking around the table quickly, most people's M is sitting around the, what's that, 10, 15 mark. But there are some people comfortably on the 20 and above. I don't think the blinds had long gone up. So most people were still playing the previous blind level, where people were a bit slow to react. And the last blind level was it 600, 1,200? So I think people were mostly sitting closer to an M of 20 or more and were still quite comfy. So no one had overly reacted and started being desperate. I'm sitting as the hero with ace of clubs, 7 of clubs. Not bad for our position.
But then the under the gun +1 has raised just a little bit over minimum, because it's 1,500 on the big blind and he's putting 3,150. So for all intents and purposes, he's basically done a min click raise. Yeah. Okay. And what was the info on this guy? Did you he was just quite erratic, did you say?
Yeah, I'm calling him erratic because he was playing in such a way that seemed to be quite aggressive, but not necessarily in the places that I would call it aggressive. It could just be that he was playing exceptionally well and he was targeting exploits in certain players, because this was what I'd noticed from him or her playing against others. So they could have just been targeting exploits, and that looks unusual to me because I've not picked up on the exploits. But for the most part, they're entering more pots at a position than most of the other nits at the table. And that could be half of it, where they're reacting to that kind of.
Yeah, they're like, this table's nitty. I'm going to loosen up and play a little bit. I wonder what he thought of you. Was you playing quite nitty as well, or was you?
I was playing looser than I normally do, and I was trying to balance some of my nittiness with some other holdings. So I was probably playing, if I'm usually only playing 10% of hands early, I was probably playing 15%, and I was consciously trying to make up the other 5% with connectors or raising a very small pair that I'd normally just call with to try to set mine, but specifically raising in certain scenarios just so I can get the extra percent. And if it does go to showdown, the people have seen that I'm capable of doing that with the best of the hands and the worst. Okay. So people probably saw me as quite aggressive, not playing too many hands, but playing in various positions and playing strong.
Okie. So we've got this open, and then you get 3 folds, and then, like you say, we're sitting in the cutoff on ace of clubs, 7 of clubs. I mean, my first thought is, let's just call this. It feels a bit risky to 3-bet. Why go up against someone who you're less likely to know what his cards are? That's probably not correct. It probably is better to raise against someone who has been looser. But he's got 29,000 left in his stack after his 3,000 raise. If we were to 3-bet that, we'd be putting in around 9,000. If he then 4-bet, he's basically all in, isn't he? And it just feels a bit risky. I don't really want to be having to go all in with my ace 7 of clubs. It suddenly becomes very sketchy kind of hand. You can't fold it. I don't think you can fold ace 7 of clubs. It's one of those suited aces that, you could end up hitting a flush, or it just feels like a call to me. What was your thoughts here?
Yeah, exactly that. The thing that really stood out is there is seat six, the villains remaining stack, exactly as you've already pulled out, where my free bet range at this point probably is to about 10 to 12k, and he's committed at that point. He's putting all his chips in. Yeah, I didn't have any reason to think he would do that, but A7's also not really the hand I want to be making that kind of risky play on, given the slow pace of the tournament, where I can afford to lose some of my chips. I can afford to lose a 10,000 by the river because I'll gain that back, but I don't really want to be donking off 30,000 on a ace 7 clubs pre-flop.
I don't hate the fold either, and that sounds a bit nitty, especially for a nitty table. But this is the guy that isn't nitty. The villain isn't nitty, so I don't hate a fold. You know, if certain situations, I'd probably, or even if I was just not feeling it for some reason, there might be something else in my mind about it, and I might just fold that, and I wouldn't hate that decision as well. But it seems like it's cheap enough. You know, he's putting 3,000 in. You've got an M of like 18. Your M's pretty good. You can play that. You can have a little gamble at this stage, especially against a looser player. You know, like you might even win with your ace. You know, like a pair of aces or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean that. Now you said it, that definitely factored in as well. Where I looked at the 3,000 and I thought, I'm trying to work out this player. I'm trying to get more information on him. I'm going to pay 3,000, check out the flop, maybe manipulate that a little bit and try to see how they react. I'm willing to pay that 3,000 with what is a fairly all right hand for this position. Whereas, for instance, if that raise was done by a seat 2, where I'm in the big blinds and they're making the undergun raise, I'd be folding that all day long. Even though I've already got an investment in the pot in the big blind, that player, if they were raising, they were paying passive enough that they wouldn't have made that bet without basically a much better race. All of their holdings had me beat for the most part. So yeah, all the same. So
My only worry with calling is you've got 3 players after you left to act, and they're actually 2 of those. The small and the big blind are the first and second chip leaders at this table. So they've got a nice healthy stack on them. It would be prime squeezing opportunity, especially if they'd sat there and noticed that they're perceived as a bit tighter. The under the gun +1 is perceived as loose, and actually you're a little bit looser than the other players at the table as well. They might see that as a good opportunity to squeeze this and, you know, chuck in 12, 13,000 chips and just squeeze you both out of the pot. It'll be very hard for you to call that from someone you're considering tight. And equally, under the gun, as then, you know, classic squeeze, he's then got that to contend with, the worry that he's beaten anyway, but also what is the cut-off going to do? What are you going to do? So that is a worry, and I wonder if GTO would say this is a fold. Maybe.
sure. One thing to note on that is that where I tried to do a little bit more balancing, people had seen me call down, like not free bet, some good hands. I'm pretty sure I had kings that then hit a set where people had seen me just calling what is quite a moderate bet,
Okay.
quite a small bet. But people had also seen me do the same maneuver with quite weak speculative hands, and they'd also seen me do some real strong raises, like I'd overbet aces in one position and then overbet 2s in the same position. That kind of, I was trying my hardest to, anyone who was picking up on stuff wouldn't have a good enough read. So just seeing the call, I might have scared people off from a squeeze just because they'd seen that they could be trying to squeeze aces, and
Okay.
we'll see.
All right then. So you do call, and we then get 3 folds. So the button, the small blind, and the big blind all fold. So great. We've got the heads up that we wanted, and we're in position going to the flop. So that's a great outcome. So you've got 2 of diamonds, king of diamonds, 5 of clubs on the flop, and villain checks. Okay, this is great. I mean, being in position, this is good. What do we think his range is here then? My initial thought is, well, the 2 and the 5 aren't anywhere near this guy's range, I wouldn't have said, unless he's got maybe a pair of 5s. I don't think he would be raising with a pair of 2s with an M of 10 or whatever he was on at the start. Pair of 2 seems a bit too weak. No, maybe not. But it would be more of an all-in, I would say, if you had a pair of 2s. I don't think you could be playing it to play the flop. He could have a pair of 5s in the hole. Really, though, I'm not too worried about that. I think the only thing to think about is how many kings are in his range, and there are quite a few. It's not the best card to have on the flop, but he's checked to us. So I think this is a bet. I think we need to bluff at this pot.
Yeah. One thing I will say though is 9 times out of 10, I feel that I would have range advantage here. Not strong, because that king is well within their range, but the rest of it could potentially be in my range. Ace 5's definitely there. Ace 2's definitely there. I mean, I'm not calling with 5-2. I could potentially be calling with king 5. Unlikely, but I'm not going to completely rule it out. I'm definitely calling with 2s and 5s.
Yeah,
well, not definitely, but
you've got pairs of 2s and pairs of 5s, like as your whole cards. You know, pocket pairs, 2s and 5s. You've got way more of those in your range, I would say, than he has.
So the other thing is that me trying to work this opponent out was part of they were doing things like check raising, and they were playing a bit more erratically, so to speak. Not erratically, tricky. So there was a part of my mind that said they'd seen how I've played enough that they're almost never raising in this position, because they're going to be check raising in this position. Okay. And one of the things I wanted to work out was, how do they respond to a check behind?
Sure. So are we checking behind here? Is this what you're saying?
We do, yeah.
Cool. Okay. The turn then comes the 10 of diamonds. I mean, I would say this is more your range than his. In the cutoff, under the gun +1 opener, he's got some 10s in his range. He's got, a pair of 10s in his range. He's got pocket 10s, hasn't he?
Yeah,
definitely. But that's less significant. He could have ace 10. That seems a little bit wide to be opening with. No, I don't know. It's difficult. What I would, if I was villain at this moment, and I had like ace 10 or king 10, I don't think I would be raising that with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people left after me to act. Most of them, in fact, I think all of them have got more chips than me, and the big blind is the chip leader. I think it would be really sketchy to be raising with like king, opening pre-flop with king 10 or ace 10. That seems a little bit. I feel like he's more likely at the moment to have a king. If he's got anything, he's got more kings in his range than he has 10s.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Cool. Yeah, I was just going to give a quick rundown. So for anyone listening, I'm sitting what was originally the cut off. So I've got position with ace of clubs, 7 of clubs. The flop has come 2 of diamonds, king of spades, 5 of clubs, rainbow. And then the 10 of diamonds has come on the turn. So we've got 2 king, 5, 10, and I've got ace 7. So officially miles away at this point.
Yeah. But then potentially so is your opponent. He's checked that flop, and then he bets about just under a third of the pot. Actually, no, a fair bit under a third of the pot, near a quarter of the pot. So the pot was 9,900, and he bets into that 2,772. So somewhere between a quarter and a third of the pot. Okay. If he did have a king and was now protecting against a possible flush, he's going way too small on his bet sizing. He's not protecting. He's giving the odds to call. Yeah. If we have got 2 diamonds, but then he's potentially not doing that. It's, you know, not everyone knows to do that anyway. Especially in a $5 game, he may just be, yeah, I've hit my 10, or he may have had the king and decided I'm going to check, see what this other guy does. Maybe, like you're right, maybe he's thinking of check raising, and then the 10s come. It's another diamond. He's thinking, well, I need to start getting some value. I've got ace king, or maybe king queen, something like that. I don't know how loose this guy was. Do you think he's capable of opening even like king 10, king jack? That seems really wide.
His opening percentages was not that. There was no one at the table who was playing loose enough or cool enough or trying to see a lot of flops to the point that in this early position with that low stack was making that kind of move. And that wouldn't even be a good balancing if they were just making that with a few other bluff hands. I wouldn't be bluffing with king 10. You're getting blocked by anything that you kind of want to hit. So no, there was very few players that I'd put on king 10 at that point.
Well, I mean, what to do here then? We're either folding, which just seems a bit weak. I think I would be re-raising this. I would be putting in a substantial bet that makes it a bet so big that he knows that if he went all in, we're very likely going to call, or at least he feels like we are. In reality, we wouldn't. But if we were to, he's got 20, just under 27,000 left in his stack. If we then put in a bet of, say, 11,000 here, so almost a pot size bet, just under, or let's just call it pot. If we were to put in, 12,500 bet here, that's an additional 8,500, 9,000 he needs to put in with 26 left. He might feel like he could still steal it away with a bluff. So maybe we need to go more than pot. Maybe this is like 150. Maybe we've got to go big here if we're gonna actually take this away. It'll just be a weird line to do that. If this guy's savvy enough, he's going to think, well, why did they check the flop? And then now they're like going way over the top of me. You're only going to be doing that with monsters or bluffs. So if we had a pair of 10s, you know what? If we've got pocket 10s in our range, and if we had a pair of pocket 10s on that flop, we may well check behind, thinking he's being tricky with a king here, a pair of kings. We've got showdown value. Let's try and get to the river. So we may well, just to check that flop, the turn has come, the magical 10 to make our set of 10s. Even better, this guy's bet, quarter, a third pot. A huge bet here could represent that exact hand, but I mean, it'd have to be pretty crap to just worry that we've got that exact hand. It feels hard for us to have a king now after checking that flop. It feels difficult. Like, would we not try to get something out of it if we had a king? It feels like we can't have a king. The 10, we could definitely black having a 10, and then it's a case of, if he thinks we've got a 10 or we've just hit a pair of 10s, then it's a case of either he's got the king and he can now value bet all in, or he can bluff all in. And I'm talking about, after, if we do this pot or pot and a half size bet, or he could bluff with his king. He could now either bet with his king for value, knowing he's got us beat with our pair of 10s, or he could bluff, thinking he might get us off of a pair of 10s because there's the king on the board, even if he's not got it. Say he's got something like ace queen. It could be a good one to do. Ace jack or ace queen. He would have the gut shot as well. Maybe Maybe this is dangerous. Maybe doing a big bluff here is dangerous because he's got the opportunity to bluff or value bet perfectly against us. If I was him, I would be thinking this guy can't have the king, and has either hit a 10 or, I feel like we've just got to fold this hand, if I'm honest.
Okay. One thing I was thinking with his line of action so far is I was certain he didn't have the king. Absolutely certain he didn't have the king. I deduced from the check, and basically what I was looking for is someone who's got a king. Maybe they got ace king, and they're looking for a check raise. They've determined I'm the kind of player who's always betting. If you've checked to me, I'm probably going to bet. There's a king out there. It's within my range. I've got range advantage. I'm probably going to bet. So they specifically check to try to get that check raise extra value. So when I then check behind and they're a bit surprised, they'll come out and think, well, I can't lose 2 streets of value, so I will bet on the turn. And I've still got ace king, so I'm not really concerned with what comes out. The board's disconnected enough that there's no scare cards for me. There's nothing that could come out that is going to cause me any trouble. So I'll then bet the next street fairly hard. Maybe not, I'm not going to necessarily smash in all my chips, but I'm going to at least bet that in this position, for instance, now there are gut shots, now there are flush draws. In this position, I'm going to want to make sure you're going to pay for that river card if you've suddenly picked up a draw, and B, try to get some value for top pair, top kicker, something like that. So when they've come out betting piddly, quarter to a third pot, the only thing that tells me is probe bet. And when I'm looking at that probe bet, it's either they've picked up a small piece of the board. So, for instance, they've picked up a 2 or a 5, which wasn't really in any part of their range. But let's just say they picked up a 2 or a 5, or more likely, they've got a pair of 8s, pair of 7s, pair of jacks that they're not too sure about with a king. Now I've checked behind, they're like, okay, well, if you've not got a king, my jacks might be good here. Not worried about the 10. I'm going to put in a little probe bet, see how you react. It might not get a fold, but if you just call it, I am pretty confident I've got you beat at this point with my jacks. You haven't got the king. If you've got a 10 or anything else under that, we've got showdown value. I might check to you and hope you check behind on the river.
Yeah,
or if it comes off a complete brick, I might throw in another little bit, see if I get a bit of extra value. Now I'm a bit more confident. But that to me says a probe bet.
All right, well, let's tell this fucker you've got the king. It's either a fold, because you could be right, it could be a probe bet, but I think it could also be he had it, was playing for a check raise, that didn't work because you checked behind. He's now like, I need to get some value. So, and the fact that it could be either or says to me this is a raise here would be a risky play, because some of the time he's going to fold, but some of the time he's going to put you all in, and then you can't possibly call. So should we see what you do in the hand? Okay. You've gone for it. I love this. Right. So you've put in about 10,500 chips. You've gone for I've got it here. What are you? What was your thoughts here? What was you representing?
In this position, if I remember rightly, I specifically tinkered with this sizing. I might not have got the maths perfect, but I bet such an amount that they had no other option but to go all in if they raised. I couldn't see any point them just calling. They're folding anything but the hands they're most sure of, because again, they've got no value left. They've got no chips left to play with. So I'm probably going to be calling as well. So this bet size is basically saying to them, I'm raising you enough that I want to see what you do, but you can try coming over the top at me. But again, that's not going to really achieve too much. I can't understand why you don't think I've got the best of it at this point. there's other lines that they could take. Like if they have got the best of it, a call would be quite good. But it's that kind of, see what happens. The bet sizing was quite specific. Whether I achieved what I think I did is another something else to argue about. But yeah, it was also, I don't want them to be drawing as though I have got something decent. It was leaving them with a tough decision. Not sure what else they're going to be doing at this point. Maybe I could have made it a bit stronger. And the only thing that tinkers with my mind now, I'm looking back at this, is a part of my reasoning at this point was I was happy to lose that 10 grand. I looked at my stack of around 50,000. I'm still pretty good at the table. If that was maybe 15, 20 grand, I'm all of a sudden becoming a bit short, and I've invested a lot in not even trying to win the hand. So he might have seen that weakness and he might have interpreted it as weakness. So, but anyway.
So just to recap then, so on the turn, the villain bets 2,700, and then our hero here with ace high goes 10,500. So around 4 times his bet. The villain's got 26,000 left behind, and hero with 51. And the villain calls. So the villain calls, and we go to a river, and the river is the 6 of spades. Interesting. Okay, villain has checked. Okay, wow. The villain has checked. He's got showdown value. He just called, but he's not pushing for value. There's 30,000 in the pot. He's got 19,000 behind. He could just jam it all in here. And if you've got a 10, if you've got a weaker king, you would kind of be obliged to call. You put in another 20,000 chips, you'd still be left with 30,000 chips, which is approximately 8 or 9 M. It wouldn't be great, but you wouldn't be out of the game. You'd still be with a fighting chance. And, this guy here, if he's got nothing, how can he have nothing? How can you call the turn? Unless he called the turn with the sole intention of jamming the river as a bluff. Maybe he's so damn good at this game that he knew you didn't have a strong enough hand with your bet on the turn, and he thought, I'm going to call it, and then I'm going to jam the river, and I'll win this. That would be pretty awesome play. I think him checking here says he's got some showdown value, but he's not certain it's the best. He's scared to bet for value. He's just really hoping you check behind and he can show his king queen, his king jack, something like that, something that he probably opened a little bit wide with pre-flop. That's what I think he's done here. You've got nothing. So you're either kind of checking this and then I'm pretty sure you've lost, or you jam. His check here stinks of weakness, or it stinks of, I really want to see a showdown. I want to be able to flip over my cards and see my king win. We could deny him off that and jam, and we cover him. This would be the end of his tournament life. If he's got king jack, king queen, we may be able to get him to fold, although that would be quite difficult, because what are we really representing? That we checked on the flop, that I feel like we're representing something like pocket tens is all I can see it as. We're repping pocket tens. What else? What is out there? Unless we've got the 3-4 suited. If we had 3-4 suited here, that would make sense. That we're like, oh great, we've got an open-ended straight draw on the flop. Let's check it. The 10 comes. He bets a bit. We decide to bluff, and then make our straight on the river. the all-in could represent that, or pocket tens. So it's a very small part of our range that we'd be representing. So we've got way more bluffs in our range at this point. We've got loads of the aces. We've got Queen Jack. We've got, if he has got that king, and we're talking about trying to get him to fold that king, we've got Queen Jack. We've got quite a lot of tens in our range that he could feel like, yeah, I'm just gonna go for this. My king still wins. Oh, I hate it, but I feel like this is a check, and then just we've lost.
Yeah, I mean, go on.
I was going to say, I feel like I respect your big bet on the turn after he bet quite a small weak amount, and then you've raised it up to 10.5, that really big bet. But I feel like he answered your question there. He called that. He called off like a third of his stack or whatever. Like, he's not got nothing. He's not got nothing. He's got something here. Surely he's not that crazy to call that with the sole intention of bluffing the river with nothing. He's got a king. He thinks you might have a 10. He's not sure. He just wants to see, this is marginal hand to him. But going all in here, I think it's an easy call for him, because there are way more bluffs in your range than there are hands that beat him.
Yeah, just one thing I'd say is that I think there's just a couple more hands in my range that I might do this with.
Okay.
I don't know if it makes any head nor tail, but I think there are some of the other pairs that might possibly take my line. Pair of eights, pair of sevens, pair of nines, pair of jacks possibly. My call behind him pre-flop, probably for my range, I wouldn't include jacks. Would include tens and blow. But let's just assume I'm being a bit tricky, or I'm balancing, or whatever. Jacks aren't a million miles from a possibility. And that kind of, there's a king, I'll check with irons. They put out a piddly bet. Oh, you know what? My jacks might, if they've just picked up a 10, my jacks are good. So re-raise, see what they do. That was my line here. I'm not going to mention my pot sizing, my bet sizing. So I do bet, but I want you to tell me, as the villain, any thought process that you think's gone into my bet size. Because again, I was very careful with my bet size, but maybe the only person who was carefully thinking about that, maybe the only person in the world whose reasoning made it that size is me, and absolutely no one else agrees with my reasoning. So that bet size is silly.
Okay, that's interesting. So all right then, so you bet quarter pot, you put 7,500 into a 30,000 pot. The villain's got 19,000 left behind, so you've put him in for coming up to half his stack, not a million miles away. It looks like, the thing is, if you're not analysing the rest of the hand, it looks like a value bet. It looks like a really, like, I've got something I desperately want you to call my 7.5K. It looks like a value bet, but if this guy is like a really kind of on it player, I think he would be just looking at the action throughout the hand. And there are some hands that are monsters and that beat him, but I think generally he's going to be thinking, no, this guy's got loads of bluffs here. Like, there's a few hands that beat me. He might be actually thinking, you've just made a clever size bet that looks like a value bet, but I don't buy it. I'm going to call you down. If he's got a king as well, you've priced him in to call it anyway. Even if he's like, oh my god, I think he must have a monster here, but he's I've got to see, because he's only bet 7,500. What was your thinking? What was the 7.5 for?
Yeah, so my reasoning, and it was my sole reasoning at this point, was not so much that this is a value bet, but this bet size made it, for me, impossible for him to just call, because basically it puts him down to about 10,000-12,000. He can barely see the blinds which are coming up. There's just no point. If you've got a hand good enough, you're shoving all in, at which point I might have just saved the extra 12,000 because I'll probably fold at that. There's no probably, I would be folding, but there's just no point. You know, what would you just call that with that you're not raising over the top with?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's like, kind of, I'm inviting him to just shove the rest of his chips in, and the only reason I'd ever be inviting someone to do that is because that's what I want them to do. I couldn't understand any reasoning for that size bet where it must be obvious to the villain that their only action at that point is to shove. Does that make sense? The risk of being the risk of being wrong with anything but a decent hand to shove with. So even if you're sitting there with ace six, for instance, or you know what I mean, a pair of nines, I think in that position where you've left yourself with so little, you can't just call that. You've got to shove. And if you've got a better hand, then you're shoving anyway. That was my reasoning. That was the bet size.
You know what? I do like it. I just wonder if that's that you're going to meet a lot of players that think, oh, it's only 7,500, and I've just hit a 6 on the river, you know, like, or I had my 5s all the way along. Well, I've got ace 5 and I've had them all the way along. I'm going to cool it down and not. I think there's a good amount of people that might just sort of think, oh, I'll just call it. I can't go all in because I've only got, second from bottom pair, but I can, 7,500 is not as much as all in. There might be people that are clinging on in that way. So can we see what he does? Or did you have anything else to say before we move on? No?
Okay. Just because of the visual we're watching, I'm not sure if it immediately shows their cards. Okay. And I really want to know your thought process on their action. So they just call. So it is just to confirm, like you have already sort of said the cards that they go through, but put him on a hand now. Put him on a couple of hands.
Right. If I had to guess, this guy's got king queen. King queen in the hole. He's hit his pair of kings. He was going to check raise the flop. It didn't work out. You've then bet. He's then bet the turn, but you've raised over the top. He's like, well, what was that? This guy's raised over the top. I've got king queen, but maybe he's got ace king or trip 5s. Oh, I don't want to go out of this tournament. I'll just call that bet. King queen really works. Even like king jack, I think works. I suppose even ace king to some extent. That just feels a little bit too strong for. I don't know, but I guess it's not though. It's the same sort of thing, really. It's still just that top pair with a good kicker. I would struggle to put him on a 10, or would I? No, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe it was just if he's got ace 10 or queen 10 suited, maybe, and the flop come down, he's missed it. He's just checked because he's missed. Then the turn comes. Oh, I've hit my 10. I'm going to bet a little bit. Oh, I've just been, heroes just bet over the top of me. That's a big bet. I've got my 10s. I've already put a bit in the pot. Maybe he's got that king. All right, I'm just going to call it. The river comes a 6. Oh, he might have that king. You know what? The more I talk it through, the more he's got a 10 here. He's got ace 10. Ace 10. If I had to guess one. If he's got something like ace 5 and ace 6, that's difficult to understand. How on the turn he could have called such a big bet with just ace 5. If he's got ace 6, then the turn makes no sense at all, like calling your bet, because he didn't have anything. He just had ace high for 6. I think he's got ace 10 or king queen. Can we have a look?
Yeah, but I don't think I can look at it. Like, I just can't look at his cards.
Ace queen. Ace queen. Oh my god.
He calls me down with nothing more than ace high, which you actually did mention at one point, but I just couldn't fathom how someone gets to that stage, leaving himself with 11,600 chips with a bluff catcher is the best they've got.
I wonder though, and like I say, if I was the villain, I would be thinking you've got a lot of bluffs here. Like the way this is played out, you've got a lot of bluffs in your range, a few hands that crush me, but generally it felt like there was just a lot of bluffs in your range, and maybe he thought, well, it's 7,500 to win 38,000. There's all these bluffs in his range, more so than there are big hands. I'm going to chuck it in. I mean, it's crazy. He's almost crippled himself if it doesn't work out. But so it is either a bit crazy or he's just done a fantastic bluff catch.
Yeah, maybe it was that the bet sizing was to the just mathematically, I'm putting him on XYZ range, and I'd be silly not to. I mean, the only thing that really bothered me about this, and the only thing that really I just couldn't get past, is every single scenario where I put that player excellent. I put that player at absolute top quality. They've literally read me for what I think is making some good moves. I think that they're not necessarily great because, as you said, my range is a bit defined by some of what I've done, but it certainly isn't I'm only doing this with absolute trash. So maybe I went away thinking my bet size on the end there clearly weren't good enough. I like what you said about how when they've got quite a lot of bluffs in my range, they've kind of got a call, but we're getting sort of close to the bubble at this point. I cannot see how ICM tells you that that's a call. I cannot think of any pro would put their position at the tournament crippled unless they were certain I had a bluff, and there is absolutely no way you could be certain I had a bluff. My play, this is new play for me, and I hadn't done it to anyone else at the table. I'd specifically changed my behavior because of this, and they'd seen me play bluffs to other players. They'd seen me in places where I did have a fold. They'd seen me get called out on the ends. Yeah, I mean, there'd been enough play that they wouldn't have seen this kind of thing and thought, oh yeah, this is something he's doing with complete trash, or he's doing it with, well, we're doing it with nothing. Like, I don't, considering what am I calling at the back with? You know, there's 5 different numbered cards out there. Playing this with, 7 deuce off has hit the 2. Playing it with any kind of connectors, that board is so disconnected that almost all connectors are in there. Like,
I don't think you'd have been calling pre-flop with many 2s.
No, sure, but it's more just the case that your position in the tournament is such that you can't give someone 100% bluff. There's everyone's got some kind of variation to their game, to their play, that you can't be that certain. And leaving yourself so shallow in the tournament, but getting close to the bubble, is not rational. The person who is good enough to do that is also the person who's good enough to move a little earlier in the hand to either define what they're up against or at least get some fold equity. Because at no point has he tried to get fold equity. He's done nothing, and he's called bets. So, like,
well, on the turn, I think he was trying to get a fold, but it was also a semi bluff because there was 2 diamonds on the board, and he had ace queen of diamonds, so he did have a flush draw and a gut shot straight draw. So any diamond, any jack, and he probably figured any ace, and maybe even any queen because of your check on the flop with the king there. He might have felt like any ace, any queen, any jack, any diamond would complete his hand on the river. Any queens, there's 3 more of them. Any ace, there's 3 more of those. That's 6. Any jack, there's 4 more of those. That's 10. And then minus the diamonds, you're talking about 18 outs. He, on the turn, calling that big bet, he had the odds to call, definitely. because he almost had, is it a flip almost? What did he have, like 18 or 19 cards he could hit that he thinks would probably make him win it out of the 45, 46 cards. He's got like 40% chance of something like 40% chance of winning it. So he definitely had the odds to call. And then on the river, he's, it's a complete blank. He's not hit his ace. He's not hit his queen. He's not hit that jack he needed for the straight. He's not hit a diamond. So he's kind of missed everything. And he's like, oh. And now he's thinking, I've got to be beat here. But then you offer him that 7,500. It does cripple his stack, but he's already crippled his stack in the hand. He's already he started the hand on, what was it, like 36,000 or something?
29,000.
29,000. And he's already lost like over a third of
Maybe
it.
Maybe a bit more.
Here. What's that, mate?
It might have been more than that, actually. That might have been after his first bet. But he started the pot with, it was 33,000, sorry. So it was after his initial bet.
So he's all, like, by the river, he's already, like, lost so much of his stack. He's lost nearly half of his stack. And the turn call wasn't terrible. He had the odds to call and make his flush, his straight, or hit one of his overcards, or the queen possibly being good. So he had that, and then the river comes, and he's probably thinking, damn, like, I've probably not got this. But then he's offered these odds to make it a profitable bluff catch. Had you jammed here on the river, I don't know. Maybe you'd have had to have folded that. Maybe. Like, given now we know what his cards are, maybe he would have had to have folded to a jam, because he's literally got ace high. And can you bluff catch with just ace high? Are you that good? You've got deep in the tourney. If he just folds it, he's still got 19,000. Yeah, he's lost like 13, 14,000 of his stack. He's lost like 40% of his stack. And then folds on the river and has to sort of let that go. But he's probably thinking, you know what, though? The M value is, 3,900. I'd still have an M of like 6 or 7. I can still do this. I can still go. I think a jam might have got a fold. But only now we know I'm not saying that was the right thing to do, because we didn't know that he had ace high. We thought I was convinced he had a king or a 10 by the end. And then being convinced he's got a king or a 10, a jam, I wouldn't have felt like that would have worked at the time. Now I know what his cards are, a jam might have worked, but that's just hindsight. That's probably quite relevant.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, I think that helps, because I'm trying to rationalize his thinking. And as far as I was concerned, I didn't have any problem with him doing what he did with the ace. I just couldn't, to be that good of a player, but I'll also take that big of a risk. Like, I get that I was giving him 5-6 to 1, but that's nothing when it means that your ICM, he had to invest 40% of his stack. However, sunk cost fallacy. If he doesn't have any concept of the chips you bet are gone, you can only now make a decision based on your current chip stack, which is only 19,000. If he's thinking, look at all that investment, I can't just throw all that away for such a small bet here. You know what? Let's just call it. I might be able, we'll see what happens. You never know. I'm putting him on a lot of bluffs in this position anyway. That does rationalize it for me, that this is possibly not as bad a play. It could be, if I proper got into the ICM, this might have been a mistake of his, but not necessarily an irrational one. Or it could be that I'm overstating ICM. I personally don't think I am. When you're getting close to the bubble, leaving yourself with what's the big blind? Big blind's 1,500, and then he's a couple of hands away, and he's got 8 big blinds. That's terrible. Why would you take such a risk? Why would you? Because it's not a necessary. I understand the benefit of bluff catching. I understand the beauty of knowing someone's got a massive bluff range. But you, in this particular tournament at this particular time, the whole point of ICM is that you don't have the luxury of a deep stack, and you don't have the luxury of, that's all right, I'll just enter another tournament. We'd been playing the tournament for like 4 hours. You'd invested a lot of time, a lot of effort. You don't just on a whim say, well, yeah, I think my ace is better than their ace. Let's just call it anyway and leave myself absolutely dogged for the entire 4-hour investment. Like, I didn't see that. Whereas I do like the idea that this could have been a possible mistake trying to chase chips that you'd lost. And this is the only way he was going to, he knew that a shove weren't going to work and it was too high risk, but the call did have enough value that he might be able to get some of them delicious chips back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I weren't playing enough. He must know that, yeah. Like, I don't like the idea of being readable enough that someone feels a bluff catcher is going to work. But I would more at this level, especially only for $5, unless you've got a very good read of someone and you think they're an excellent player, but I know exactly what they're doing, I would always have an element of, you've got this wrong. Does that make sense? Especially when you've got so much of an investment on it and you are not beating anything. You need to be very close to certain, and I don't think even the best players can be very close to certain at this level. There's just too many players that, like us, know tons about one thing and absolutely nothing about another, or are trying maneuvers that they're practicing, but they're not trying the rest of it that you'd expect from someone who's got that in their arsenal. Does that make sense? So, like, for all he knows, I am trying something which I think I've seen before and I've just done it badly or in the wrong position. And that was me playing a set mine, and I didn't understand how to set mine properly. And I was just kind of, do I bet here? Oh, no, it's just called. So there was every chance that I could have had him smashed. I mean, why would you? I understand the 6-1 that they were getting, but leaving yourself with 11,600 chips is just, I just can't see someone doing that rationally without being more certain than they could be. Does that make sense? If you're that good a player, you're going to earn so much more from having 20,000 in your stack and working away at the people that you can get some chips off than putting in another 40% of your stack on a whim, on a wing and a prayer.
I'm not sure I agree with you on this point, actually. I think when you're all right, it is a risk. He's already knocked himself down to 19,000, and he would knock himself down to 11.5 making this call. But either way, he's pretty short stacked and he's going to need a double up soon. So either he folds and needs to make a double up, not quite as soon, but soon, or he calls it and, probably needs to make even more of a double up very quickly. But with those odds, the incentive is, if it pays off, and he might have calculated there are more bluffs in your range than there are, legitimate hands from the way it's played out, then actually he's going to end up with 56,000. He's going to be well back in the game. He's going to have an M value of nearly 20. This is kind of like I'm pretty not crippled, but I'm short stacked anyway. If I fold, I'll be a bit more short stacked if I call. But if I call, I may well be well back in this. And actually, I got respect to what he's done. And it might just be that he's crazy and he's just like, I can't give up my ace queen because it looks so good. And maybe it is that, or maybe he's just like, really thought it through to that level of this is potentially going to make me in this game. It's going to give me a chance to really get into the past the bubble or ladder up or whatever.
I mean, I wouldn't
just having a shorter stack than the short stack he's already left himself because of the flop on the turn.
I mean, there is maths that could be done. compared to the odds that I'm giving him. So I was giving him, he was having to make 7,500 to win 38,000 roughly. So what's that? 5-1. So all he needs to put me on is, well, he'd need to put me on an 80% bluff range. Is that right? Because then the 80% that he's losing, the 80% that he's winning.
No, you'd only need to be bluffing 20% of the time for him to break even on that.
Sorry, yeah, it's the other side, isn't it? 20%.
And just with the way the hand's gone, that doesn't seem unreasonable, and it is a bit of a punt, but it doesn't seem completely out of the question.
But then this is it. It was never the call. It was, because that's just working out the value of a bluff catch, which in any other position, if we were deeper, that would have been a superb play. But I personally think that investing 40% of your stack, because that's the other side. If we take it on face value, he's investing 40% of his stack, on the potential that bluffs make up 20% of my range, which they might have done. I personally feel that even that figure's not sketchy per se, but it's how much do you know my play to be certain of that. I don't think they'll have enough hands to showdown that prove that they're going to be that kind of accurate, especially when this isn't maneuvers that I'd made before. So some of the stats, if they're using a HUD, some of the stats that they're looking at will have no hand history for. So like 3 bets on the turn, there probably was no other hand, or at the most one other hand that they saw me do that, and I guarantee it weren't with air. If it indeed went to showdown.
Maybe we could do the maths here. Why don't we do them? Like, I know there's a lot of assumptions made, but let's say.
Well, it's more the ICM that it goes with. Like,
okay,
is it worth losing 40% of your stack? And I'll be really honest, like leaving yourself 11,700, just shy of 12,000, and the can't think of the name for it. The M value. Apologies for the break there. So 1,500, 750, 2,000, 3,000. I mean, yeah, you're leaving you with an M less than 3. So you are completely on a crap shot. You're at the complete mercy. And let's be clear, you're going to be under the gun in 1 or 2 hands. You don't even have the luxury of first person vigorish. You don't have the luxury of having enough chips that people are even going to want to fold. The other side of it, and let's be really,
does feel risky.
The other side, which I haven't even considered up till this point, you've just shown the whole table that you're going to do that with nothing. No one's going to respect that shove with 12,000 left.
I'll tell you what it does do though. No one's going to bluff him. One's going to bluff him ever again. Well, because they're like, shit, how has he just called that with ace high, basically ace high queen kicker? Like, no one's going to bluff him again. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. But then someone's going to call him down with like 7 deuce off, and they're going to laugh if they get lucky with him. But the main thing is that he's left himself with no luxury. He won't have enough hands left to do anything with. Another reason why I think ICM made this a bit of a poor choice. Like, how have you allowed yourself to get that crippled to then call it at the end when you're essentially betting 40% of you're betting 40% of any remaining equity he had in this whole tournament on a hope that you've got your percentages right and this person is on a bluff.
How far were you from the money?
I'm trying to think. It weren't far. It might have been just after this blind level. It went up to the money. It might not have been. It might have been a bit further, like another blind level, but it was close enough. It's difficult to see how many players were left in at that point. In fact, I could probably tell you. So this was at does it? Or it doesn't actually say the time I was playing. I think it said on the other hand history that this was about 6:30 in the afternoon. This was about 5-10 minutes before the bubble. So this was, I was cooking dinner at the time, and then I had dinner at 7 p.m. after I'd already gone out tournament, and I made the bubble because I was getting quite upset about not knowing where the bubble was. So this was actually very close to the bubble. Now, let's be clear, it was a $5 tournament, and the bubbles to $8. So it's not like he's going to, he's going to be able to pay his mortgage off if he makes the bubble. But everyone has it. No matter how good you are, you've invested 4 hours into a tournament. You don't just throw it away. Like on a mathematically good play that's going to foul 80% of the time. I could be wrong. And maybe that's where I'm leaking.
I think that's what the pros do, though, isn't it? They go, well, again, over an infinite number of hands, if this is a positive, what do you call it? Not EV, is it? Not expected value. Yeah, positive EV play. Then they will do it. Especially if it's like that stage where, like, yes, the money must come into it a bit, but especially where, like I say, like I know it's going to be particularly low, but he's going to be low anyway at 19,000. I'm not sure this is a clear-cut stupid move, is all I'm saying from him.
Oh no,
it possibly is. I think it could be considered a pretty good move, maybe. So I was just going to say that this is just for our practice. If 20% of the time we are completely bluffing like we are with this ace-7, if 20% of the time his call would win him 45,000, so that's plus 9,000, but 80% of the time he will lose 7,500 that he has to put in. So 7,500, 80% of that is 6,000. So the 9,000 that he wins minus the 6,000 he loses, if those bluffing 20% of the time versus 80% of the time he is behind because we've got some sort of pair or something. If we're right in that, then it's a plus equity, a plus value play, plus expected value play for 3,000, because you do 9,000 that he would win and 6,000 that he would lose. Give him 3,000. I don't know if that's overly relevant because we're just guessing the amount of bluffs we've got in our range, but that's how we would do it.
No, sure. Cool. I mean, I've just had a look. I finished higher than him in the tournament. Not that it makes a blind bit of difference to anyone. We both cashed for the same amount, but it makes me feel better that they didn't do anything useful with them chips that I gave them. So maybe this was it. We're giving him way too much credit. It's so nice to look at their cards and really deduce what could be an excellent play, and then the players sitting at home thinking, this is my hand. Yeah, I was trying to kick fold and I accidentally pressed the spacebar. I mean, that's all it was. I was folding all day long, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what? I was just playing speculative the entire time. You never know.
That was a great hand to read. I love that one.
I hated it, but I loved how much I disliked it.
I'm sure you hated playing it and getting called by, like what looks like an amazing bluff catcher.
Yeah, but you can understand after seeing that and after being completely like, how could you do that? How could you ever do that? Yeah. Like, why are they kind of? I kind of tilted out of the tournament. It weren't. I mean, if you look, I've still got 43,000. I'm all right around the table, but then people would have been able to feel my shaken confidence in some of the moves, and I haven't gone back and properly analysed, but I should. And I guarantee my bet sizing wouldn't have been as strong. My frequency of betting would have gone down. The hands that I was strong on, I played to win, not to get the most value. Little things like that, because I just needed a few wins, not I needed to extract as many chips as I can at this point.
It sounds like you need to read, like I do, a book called The Mental Game of Poker. because I don't know exactly what it's about, but I reckon it's about this kind of stuff, about just resetting every hand, start again, and not letting yourself tilt, about, playing and getting closer to the money and the stakes being, or the prizes being really big, but just being able to play it cool and play your best game of poker and play it to win, or play it to minimum cash if that's what you're playing it for, whatever. But the mental game of poker, I want to read that. I think that's definitely, early on, like we are in our poker journey, it's probably a good one to read, because we're reading a lot of mathematical stuff. We're reading a lot of different views and different theories, but maybe one on just looking after our own mindfulness during play would be a good idea as well.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've always given myself pride and credit that I rarely do go on tilt. So if I get a bad beat, I've got myself in such a way that I actually enjoy it. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard me playing live, but when I've got a bad beat, I immediately say to everyone, well, what would I have rather? I've got it in with the worst of it. No, I made the right choice, got it in with the best of it. And that variance is what we love. Like, if that variance didn't exist, we wouldn't play poker. So I need to lose these hands because I'm going to win the rest of them when I've got it. Statistically speaking, we're good. And it's not me lying to myself, trying to rationalize what feels bad. I genuinely have no problem with a bad beat. It's just like, oh, you know what? I had the best of it. Like, as soon as my cards go over, I've got ace king, they've got ace nine. I'm like, well, great. I've got the best hand. I've made the right decision. They've hit their nine. All right, doesn't matter.
Well, you're a better man than me, because when I get bad beat on, especially if it's my tournament life, I'm just like, oh.
No, of course.
I mean, an hour later, I'm like, that is just the game, and I'm back to like buzzing about poker, and I love the game, and I want to learn it and learn it and learn it some more. But yeah, no, I definitely have an emotional reaction. Like, as the stakes get bigger, as I'm sure they will as we go on, there's gonna be broken mice. There's gonna be laptops thrown across the room. There's gonna be poker chips flying, mate.
Of course. My tilt is like this, where something happens and I either can't rationalize it, or I get a real bad feeling of I've been found out, and some of the things that I felt were good plays are now all of a sudden bad plays, and they might be obvious to people, and oh dear, I don't know, I can't make any moves at any point anymore, because I can't work out if they were ever good, or if they were bad moves that I got lucky with, or they were good moves but only against rubbish players, and now I'm out of my depth. Does that make sense? That kind of imposter syndrome that someone can really shake your confidence. Yeah. I suffer that massively, and until I've got absolute confidence, no, Martin, you were doing the right thing right there. Sorry, Tain. Do people even know my name's Martin? I've never even thought that before. But Tain, like, unless I'm certain of my chain of action. So, for instance, if I've got ace king in this position and I'm betting every street, then it won't make a blind bit of difference if I've walked into a monster, because I'm fully aware of my actions. I know the right moves. I know exactly what I've done. And if I've walked into a monster, I've already told myself that doesn't matter. In this position, I will pay off someone who's got a pair of fives. That's fine. I'll take that, because the times that they haven't, I'm winning. But when this happens and it's like, what are you doing? When you're playing against a drunk person who, in one or two hands, you think, no, you are good. You do know what you're doing, and you seem to be aware of some key things, but you're also playing like a moron, and you're also talking like you're an idiot. You're also playing every single hand that, and it feels uncomfortable, and every single pot's getting raised, and people are putting in far too many chips. And I can't work out if that's because you're superb, or because you've just got enough muscle memory to play certain bits good and the rest of it is lost in drunk. Does that make sense? Yeah. That throws me so much. It's really exploitable as well.
Yeah, I can relate to it. It's almost like you build up this system in your head of, what's right. We're working out, the correct way to play more and more and more. And I'm sure we're still a long way away, but we're getting better and better at that. And when something comes along or something happens that just completely breaks the whole belief system, it is devastating. But I think that's, again, the mental game of poker. It's accepting that as you become more versed in what is considered correct, you start to think you can beat the game at all points. But unfortunately, there are going to be people that just completely throw all the rules out the window or do something completely different to what they've been doing before, and it's going to catch you out. And whether they've been clever about that or whether they've just got exceedingly lucky, or it's either way, it's gonna be irritating. You're gonna lose chips on that occasion, but you can't let that become your whole belief system. It can change your belief system a little bit, and it can change the way you approach certain things, but you've still got to keep on that path of learning poker and learning the way to crush the game. And all of those, that variance is just that. It's just variance. It's just sometimes people are going to be doing stuff you don't expect. Sometimes people aren't going to be what you consider playing decent poker or kind of good ABC poker, and it's very difficult, and it's all just part of it. We just got to kind of expect that. Sometimes it's going to mean we go out of a tournament and it might feel very unfair, and that's, again, it's all about this mental game of poker of just accepting that those things happen along the way.
Yeah, I think the thing you've highlighted for me saying that is I don't practice enough. So these spots they're not familiar enough for me to be able to rationalize it. If this was the 10th time someone had bluff catch me this month, I wouldn't have any worry and lack of confidence. It will be, okay, saying in my games, letting these people walk all over me with absolutely nothing. If I never saw that bluff catcher again, but I was playing thousands of hands, I'd be like, either that player is an absolute genius, or more likely at $5, they've made a bit of a mistake and they're trying to clutch at chips that they shouldn't have. We'll see.
Try and do it the other way. And these are good things to write down. They say you should always write down when you bad beat out on someone else. When you get lucky. But it kind of works with this what we're talking about as well, because there's been times when we've got to the river and I'm like, my bottom pair didn't improve, or like my middle pair didn't improve. I'm going to bluff. I'm going to turn my pair of eights into, a bluff, bet big, sit there going, please don't call, please don't call. The guy calls and he's got a pair lower than yours and you win the hand. that happens as well. That shit happens, where, you've got these bad plays coming elsewhere and it catches you out and you lose chips. But sometimes you win a load of chips because someone makes a terrible call, or it goes the other way. And we've got to remember those times. You've got to write those times down. It's like when you've got lucky, you're going behind, but you luck out and you double up because you've rivered a straight or hit a set on the river or whatever. You got to write that down. You got to remember those, because it's easy to remember the times when it hasn't gone so well and people have been bad beating against you.
Yeah. No, yeah, and I do try to remember them. Sometimes I multi-table some spin and goes or some fast action games, and you can only have 4 tables open at once on your mobile, and I'll push all in, and I'm like, you know what, I'm never going to win this, or they call it on the flop and I'm like, okay, well, I'm out, and I'll try to open another table and it's like, you can only have 4 tables open. I'm like, oh, right, okay. Oh yeah, I've got double the chips. I don't know. I don't know what happened because I'd already given up on the hand, and I'm like, that couldn't have been good, poor person. But yeah, it is just trying to keep your eyes on it, trying to remember the wins. Often everyone's got a bad beat story.
Sure, I think it's half the game. It's you might learn mathematically how to crush the game, but if you don't learn how to ride those waves, without sinking, then it's you're going to sink.
I mean, something I was just thinking about today, and I haven't properly developed it, but it is very much along the mental side of the game that I've not really heard in podcasts, and it might be I just need to listen to more podcasts or read more books. But would you, in a tournament, specifically in a tournament, not cash, would you in a tournament knowingly lose a hand and lose chips with the best of it because you felt that that would mentally influence that player and you could take advantage of that to a greater profit?
Maybe not losing a load of chips, but I have folded a couple of times to make a player feel like they've got a hope in hell of folding their way into the money or folding their way to a better position. Or I think it works well in heads up. Like if they seem way too passive and you're kind of crushing them down, let them have fold a couple, let them feel like, oh yeah, it is okay to fold. Look, he's doing it as well. And then they'll carry on folding like 90% of their hands and suddenly go all in. I wonder if I should call. No, I'll fold that one. I'll do a couple of folds, even if they're pretty good cards, just because he needs to feel like it's okay to fold constantly. So in a way, I know what you're talking about. It's just I probably don't do it. I probably wouldn't give someone a really good amount of chips. I don't think I've done that.
No, yeah, it's more in my mind. It'd be more, I don't know, 5% of your stack. So it's not a significant amount, but it was in a position where there might even be some additional value that you knew you could have got as well. So it could be potential earnings that you're not realizing by not continuing with the hand. But that person, you know the way they play, and you know that they need to have a win against you to feel emboldened to keep playing maybe far too loose at you.
Yeah, okay.
Does that make sense?
That sounds like a really clever play. I mean, I don't think I've done that, but I can see where you're going with that. Yeah, definitely.
No, I mean, I've certainly considered it, and that's what made me think of it. I love that kind of us sitting, especially it's mainly in live play where I see people week in, week out, and there are times where I feel, okay, I know exactly what you think my image is, and if I keep pushing you, you're going to suddenly plug something that I don't want you to plug. So certain players that we know that play very tight, play only a small range, but if you keep every time they raise and you're pretty certain they're doing it with a pocket pair, if you free bet them every single time, they will adjust, and you don't want them to do that. So you'll specifically lose something that you think is probably going to win in this situation because that exploit's too valuable to you.
Wow. Tain, I don't think I've thought on that level, if I'm honest with you. That's cool.
Oh, well, I've definitely thought that against someone we played against. You could probably work it out. No, but that kind of, I don't know enough. I know certain weaknesses you've got, but that one pays me more. So I'm definitely not going to push that button hard.
Okay. Fair play. All right. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up, Tain?
No, apart from if I ever see that player walking down the street, I'm going to trip him up. Pull their hair.
Or trip him over the book, The Mental Game of Poker.
Yeah. Well, I might just get a pen and write fold ace high on their heads.
It's going to kill you, man. It's going to kill you. Thanks a lot, Tain. It's been a fantastic session.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for your insight. It's brilliant.
And thanks for all our listeners. We hope that you're enjoying it and you're learning as much as we are. And hopefully we'll see you in Vegas.
Yeah, and certainly if you've listened back through this hand and you feel we're missing really obvious things that are like, are you kidding me? Yeah, your bluff range is 100%. You
please
idiot.
Please tell us.
Yeah, push that button. Press that reply.
Cool.
Get your exclamation marks in the chat.
Well, look, best of luck at the tables, everyone, and see you next time.
Take it easy. Cheers.